How much rent can you actually afford in the UK by salary? £21 billion. That is how much rent was paid by private tenants in England alone last year. 21 billion. If you stacked that in £20 notes, the pile would be taller than Mount Everest 3 times over. And the headlines love to talk about that number. UK rental market hits record highs. Rents rise for 15th consecutive quarter. Average monthly rent outside London now exceeds £1,300. Open any property website and it sounds like every landlord in the country is printing money while every tenant is living in a penthouse. But then you close the app, you put your phone down, and you look at your own bank account. The current account with £340 in it. The credit card balance you have been meaning to clear since Christmas. The ISA you have not looked at in 6 months. And a very quiet, very uncomfortable question starts to form at the back of your mind. If the rental market is booming and wages are supposedly rising, why does your rent feel like a knife every single month? Today, we are going to peel back the most dangerous illusion in UK personal finance. Because the truth is, the rent you see advertised and the rent you can actually afford are 2 completely different animals. And once you understand the difference, you will never look at a tenancy agreement the same way again. Let us start with the big, scary number. The average monthly rent in the UK in 2025 is currently around £1,300. In London, that number jumps to over £2,100. In Manchester, it is roughly £1,100. In Birmingham, about £950. Sounds brutal, right? And it is. But here is where the illusion begins. Most affordability calculators used by letting agents and referencing agencies assume that you can spend up to 30% of your gross monthly income on rent. 30%. That is the magic number the industry has been using for decades. But watch what happens when we strip away the industry formulas and look at real life. Let us take a typical salary. The median full-time salary in the UK is currently around £35,000 per year. After tax, national insurance, and a reasonable 5% pension contribution, that leaves you with roughly £2,300 per month. 30% of your gross income for rent works out at about £875. That is the number the letting agent wants you to believe is affordable. But here is your reality. You still have council tax. That is another £150. Gas and electricity. That is £180. Water, £40, internet and mobile, £50, groceries, £250, transport, assuming you do not own a car, £120. Add those up and you have already spent £1,665. On a take-home pay of £2,300, that leaves you with just £635 for everything else. Clothes, savings, dental work, a single pint at the pub, or God forbid, an emergency. Now read that again. On the median UK salary, the industry says you can afford £875 in rent. But real life says that after your basic bills and food, you are left with £635 to cover everything, including the rent. That math does not work, unless you never plan to save a penny or replace a broken washing machine. So where did this 30% rule come from? And why is it lying to you? The 30% rule was invented in the United States in 1969. It was never based on financial science. It was based on a single piece of public housing legislation in the US. And for 50 years, estate agents, landlords, and mortgage brokers have repeated it because it makes their numbers look good. It lets them push the rent higher. But here is the truth. In the UK in 2025, the real affordable rent number is not 30% of your gross income. It is closer to 25% of your net income, your take-home pay, the money that actually lands in your account. Let us run the numbers properly. If you earn £25,000 per year, which is roughly the starting salary for a teacher or a junior nurse, your take-home pay is about £1,800 per month. 25% of that for rent gives you £450. That is not a flat. That is a room in a shared house in a cheap city or a studio in a bad part of town. That is the reality. If you earn £35,000, which is the median salary we just looked at, your take-home pay is roughly £2,300. 25% of that for rent gives you £575. That might get you a 1-bedroom flat in Stoke-on-Trent or in a cheaper part of Sheffield. But in Bristol, Brighton, or anywhere inside the M25, that does not exist. If you earn £50,000, which puts you in the top 20% of earners, your take-home pay is roughly £3,100. 25% of that gives you £775 for rent. That is a modest one-bedroom flat in a zone 3 or 4 part of London. Not a penthouse, not a garden, a flat. If you earn £70,000, your take-home is roughly £4,200. 25% gives you £1,050. That is a decent one-bedroom in Manchester, or a very small two-bedroom. That is the real salary needed to rent alone without anxiety. Now let me introduce you to someone. She does not have a name, but you know her. Maybe you are her. She is 31 years old. She works as a marketing manager in Leeds. She earns £38,000 per year. On paper, that is a good salary, above the national average. She rents a one-bedroom flat in the city centre for £950 per month. The letting agent told her she could afford it. But here is her Tuesday night. She is sitting on her sofa with her phone open. Her electric bill just came in, £230 this month, because her building has an inefficient heating system. Her water bill is £60. Her council tax is £160. She has £50 left on her credit card from buying a winter coat. Her current account balance is £210. Payday is 8 days away. She cannot move. The deposit for a new flat would be £1,900. She does not have that. She cannot ask her parents. They are renters too. Her wealth is not locked in a house like Canada. Her wealth does not exist at all. Every pound she earns goes to her landlord, the energy company, and the council. This is the British rental crisis in one person. Solid salary, no extravagance, and still one broken boiler away from disaster. Now, is this a uniquely British problem? No, but the UK has a specific flavour of it that makes it worse than most of Europe. Let us look at how other countries structure renting. In Germany, over 50% of the population rents for their entire lives. But German renters have something we do not. Strong rent caps, long-term tenancies, and laws that make it very difficult for a landlord to evict you for no reason. German renters spend roughly the same percentage of income on rent as we do, but they do not live in fear of a Section 21 notice. They do not have to move every 12 months. They can actually put down roots. In France, rent is capped at a percentage of the local median income. In Switzerland, rents are high, but wages are significantly higher. In the UK, we have the worst combination: high rents, weak tenant rights, and a generation that has given up on home ownership because the average deposit is now over £30,000 outside London and over £100,000 inside it. So what does actual affordability look like if you ignore the estate agents and do the math yourself? Let me give you the only 3 numbers that matter. Number 1, your fixed costs: rent, council tax, energy, water, internet, transport, groceries. These are not negotiable. Add them up. If that total exceeds 60% of your take-home pay, you are in the danger zone, not the uncomfortable zone, the danger zone, because that leaves you only 40% for savings, debt repayment, social life, clothes, dental work, and the unexpected. If your fixed costs hit 70%, you are one missed paycheck from missing rent. Number 2, your emergency fund buffer. Before you sign any tenancy agreement, you should have at least 1 month of rent saved on top of your deposit. That is your moving buffer. If you do not have that, you cannot afford to move into that flat, because the moment you hand over the deposit and the first month's rent, your bank account will be empty, and then a bill arrives, and then you are using a credit card, and then you are trapped. Number 3, the real affordability test. Take your annual salary, divide it by 52. That is your weekly pay. Now divide that by 2. That is the maximum weekly rent you should actually pay if you want to live without constant stress. Let me show you why. The median salary is £35,000. Divided by 52 gives you £673 per week. Half of that is £336 per week. Multiply by 4.3 gives you roughly £1,445 per month. That is the maximum rent. But notice something. That math uses the 30% rule we already rejected. So let us do the real math. Take your hourly wage. If you earn £15 per hour, which is roughly £31,200 per year, you need to work 5 hours every single day just to pay your rent for that day. 5 hours. By Tuesday lunchtime, you have paid for your landlord's mortgage. Everything after that is for you. If you earn £12 per hour, which is roughly £25,000 per year, you need to work over 6 hours per day just for rent. By Tuesday afternoon, you have earned nothing for yourself. That is the mental shift. Do not ask what percentage of your income goes to rent. Ask how many hours of your life you are working for free for someone else. So who are the renters in the UK who are actually comfortable? Not rich, just comfortable. I have looked at the ONS data and spoken to people who manage to save while renting. 3 patterns emerge. Pattern 1. They live below their means, not below their ego. The most common mistake young professionals make is renting the nicest flat their salary can technically pass referencing for. That flat might cost £900, but the flat downstairs with older fixtures cost £750. Same building, same location, £150 less per month, £1,800 per year. That is a holiday. That is a safety net. The comfortable renters choose the ugly flat and paint it themselves. Pattern 2. They treat rent as a fixed ceiling, not a starting point. When estate agents run affordability checks, they look at your gross salary and say you can afford up to a certain number. The comfortable renters ignore that number entirely. They take their take-home pay, subtract all their bills, savings, and debt payments first, and then whatever is left is their maximum rent. Not the other way around. Most people say, I earn this much, so I can pay this much rent. The comfortable renters say, I need to save this much and spend this much on life, so I have this much left for rent. That difference in sequence changes everything. Pattern 3. They do not rent alone until they absolutely have to. This is the hardest one to hear. The median 1-bedroom flat in the UK costs significantly more per person than a 2-bedroom flat shared by 2 people. A 1-bedroom flat might cost £900. A 2-bedroom flat might cost £1,200. That is £600 per person, £300 less every month, £3,600 less per year. The comfortable renters share until their salary forces the math the other way. That might be 30 years old. That might be 35. That is fine. Loneliness is a real cost, but so is financial destruction. Let us come back to where we started. £21 billion in rent paid every single year. It is a staggering number. And it is real, but it is also misleading because behind that number are millions of people looking at their bank accounts on a Tuesday night, wondering why they earn a decent salary but feel completely broke. The real question is not how much rent can you technically afford according to a letting agent spreadsheet. The real question is, if you lost your job in 30 days, could you pay your rent for the next 2 months without borrowing money? For millions of UK renters, the answer on paper is yes, because their salary passes the reference check. But for nearly half of them, the honest answer is no. Their money is already spent before it arrives. It lives in the landlord's account, not their savings. It looks like independence on the tenancy agreement, but feels like a trap in real life. The shift that separates the truly comfortable renter from the one who is just surviving is a mindset change. It is the decision to stop measuring affordability by what the estate agent says you can borrow and start measuring it by what your bank account can actually survive. Can you cover an emergency boiler repair? Can you still save £200 this month after rent? Can you survive a 5% rent increase without breaking into your overdraft? That is real affordability. That is financial breathing room. And in a country where the average rent has risen faster than wages for 8 of the last 10 years, it has never been more important to know the difference. Stop trusting the referencing agency. Start doing your own math, not because a YouTube video told you to, but because the gap between the rent you are approved for and the rent you can actually afford might be the most important number in your entire financial life. If you learned something from this video, hit that subscribe button.